Welcome back, everybody, to the Calaveria podcast, your one-stop shop for all things supernatural. And if this is your first time joining us, welcome. I'll be your host as we venture into the unknown. And as you guys might see, it is just me for today because, as we addressed in the last episode, Samantha is back at school. And, for the next couple of episodes, we really don't know how long it's going to be, but it's just going to be me until we work out exactly how we're going to do this. But nonetheless, I have a very good episode for you guys in store. I'm always excited for the next episode. I just feel like I find a new topic that gets better and better, and I think this one is no exception. This is going to be a special one because, I don't know, it's just something that I had never heard of before, so I'm excited to share it with you guys. But we have no announcements for today, so without further ado, let me introduce today's topic: haunted hospitals. So just like with our previous episode, I will be covering two stories today. One of them is going to be a shorter one, and then the other will be longer. And I do just want to give a brief trigger warning before I begin. There is a brief mention of suicide. So today, I'll be covering the case of La Planchada, or the Ironed Lady. The story of La Planchada takes place in 1930s Mexico City, more specifically in el Hospital de San Pablo, now known as El Hospital Juárez. As the story goes, there was a nurse by the name of Eulalia who was by all means an incredible worker. Many reported her to be very serious about her work and passionate about helping the sick. She cared deeply about her patients and did all that she could for them. It could have been because of the fact that she was such a well-respected nurse that she ended up catching the eye of a doctor that went by the name of Joaquin, who also worked in the hospital. Eulalia and Joaquin would eventually fall in love, and according to one version of the story, Joaquin proposed and the two were engaged. Sometime later, Joaquin told Eulalia about a conference that he had to attend, which would mean that he would be out of the city for some time. He would go to the conference, but never return. There are two main reports as to where Joaquin had went. One report states that he never truly went to a conference, but instead had been married all along and went on a honeymoon with his wife, never to return again. Another report says that while he was gone, he met another woman and never bothered to return. Regardless of which of the two is true, Eulalia did not take the news well and would be deeply affected by it. Soon, Eulalia's work began to sink. She would begin to make mistakes when caring for patients, something that she was not known to do because of her immense passion for caring and making sure her patients were well taken care of. Eventually, her depressive state led her to lose a patient. She was no longer herself. She had been lost in her sorrow, and her patient paid the ultimate price. After losing her patient, she spiraled further into her depressive state. Some say as a result, she fell ill, and because she was in such a bad mental state, she had no will to fight and soon passed. Others say that her depression caused her to take her own life in that same hospital that she worked at. Shortly after her death, many of the hospital workers and patients began to report sightings of a ghost throughout the floor. They would say that they had seen a female nurse in a fresh, well-ironed nurse outfit, and thus she earned the name La Planchada, or the Ironed Lady. La Planchada has been known to roam around patients' rooms, hallways, and the emergency floor. This is not only specific to the Hospital Juárez, as many other patients in hospitals throughout Mexico have reported seeing La Planchada. She has been said to be seen glowing, hovering, or walking without making a sound, and most shockingly, healing patients. One patient was reportedly asked by a nurse how she was feeling, and she responded by saying, "A nurse came in and healed me," referring to La Planchada. So now, I want to know, what do you think about La Planchada? Alright, you guys, so clearly here we have a case of a more hospitable spirit, right? This is stuff that we have covered in the past. We've talked about it, and these are not common, right? We don't really hear about these ghosts or spirits that stick around and are actually like being helpful. And this is one thing that me and Samantha have discussed before in the past, and I've always said that like if I were to have an experience with a spirit, I would like it to be a sort of spirit just like La Planchada, right? Or Eulalia. And I find it very telling of like the type of person that she was. And I will show on the Instagram post, so on our Instagram at calaveriapod, there will be a picture of what many report to be Eulalia. And this is the picture that if you search up La Planchada or the story of La Planchada, this picture of her will pop up everywhere. So I could not confirm whether or not this was specifically her, but literally like every story or news article that was covering it showed this picture. So I'm gonna, assume just like everybody else is her. And again, that will be on the Instagram. But as you can see, like she is wearing that freshly pressed uniform, just like everybody had said. That's why, she got her nickname La Planchada. But as I was saying, I would like to meet this type of spirit, right? And it's very telling of the type of person that she was. She was very, very passionate about her job and her work. And I mean, like we've seen in many of these stories, just like with La Llorona, it took a man to kind of ruin that for her. And it's very nice to see or to think that, okay, yes, this man caused her to spiral and to lose control, and ultimately it led to her death, right? But she didn't let that faze her, because even after death, she came back and did what she was meant to do, right? Her calling. This is what she was known for. This is what she wanted to be known for. Although this man took her life in a sense, right? I mean, although he didn't necessarily kill her himself, he did kind of like influence this. But she didn't let that affect her. Well, I mean, she did, but I mean, she didn't let that affect her legacy, because now she is helping people all over Mexico. That's one thing in this, when I was researching the story, many people did say that it was only in the same hospital. Some people said it was in the same room that she had passed away in, or she took her life in. Others said that it was the whole floor, or it was just the emergency room, or it was the hospital itself. And then, I mean, as I told you guys in that last part of the story, that woman had said that she came in there and she healed her. So many people report seeing La Planchada all throughout Mexico, which kind of shows that she is fulfilling her destiny in a sense. And I know people say that like spirits have unfinished business, right? And for all we know, I mean, this is clearly it. She is in her nurse's outfit. She is healing people. She is doing the job that she so loved to do when she was alive, but now in the afterlife. And she is helping many, many more people that she did than in her lifetime. So now I want to touch on what people say is that like she's either glowing or not glowing. So for the most part, people do report seeing her glowing, right? And I feel like this is kind of nice as well. Like kind of gives me like that warm feeling. Like if you were to see that, it would kind of, I mean, it might, the way I'm thinking about it, it would kind of seem like an angel coming to me, like so imagine you're sick, nurse walks in, well, floats in perhaps, because that's what people say too, is that she's also reported to float and not just walk. But she has this aura to her, and they say it's kind of like a bluish, like haze. I mean, for all I know, that's an angel too, right? And not only that, but I mean, she's healing me too, and I feel better after that. I really like the story of La Planchada, because it shows that like, unlike La Llorona, right, where I mean the same thing, it was like a man that led her to spiral, and now she's kind of like doomed for eternity to like hunt for her kids and take other people's kids. This is like a spin on that, where yes, this man did her wrong and it ultimately led to her losing her life. She did not let this affect her. We're now in the afterlife, as I've said before. She's making something of it. And now we go on to the footsteps parts. I feel like this is kind of interesting, because some people say is, for one, she's either hovering or she's walking. And if she is walking, making, like clearly seeing her feet like move on the floor, they don't make any noise. So you don't hear the footsteps. I think this is like weird how like there's these little, details that many people report. And I mean, who knows, maybe this is just the same Planchada, or there's many spirits of these nurses that are there to do this job. And I mean, I think it might go back to like what I said, right? It could be, like an angel or something. Nonetheless, I think the story of La Planchada is a much needed story because we have plenty of stories of possession and all these demonic entities, but you don't really hear about these spirits that are out doing good, right? That are kind of combating these evil entities. And it's so interesting to think, okay, like we don't really hear much about it, right? It's kind of like surprising when we do. Like, yes, there's evil spirits, there's demons out here that possess people, and they cause harm to not only the person they're possessing, but the family members, the priests, whoever it is that are trying to combat these entities. So why isn't there a counter to that? Why isn't there the opposite, a spirit that actually is there to help? And I think that's why it's so important that we have these stories of, such as La Planchada or other ones. And I'm sure there's similar stories to her, around the world. This is just one case that is in Mexico, Mexico City to be specific, that originated there. And what I find most interesting is the fact that this is a true story, because this hospital does exist, and I will show a picture of it as well. Just like the outside, it says Hospital Juarez, and this is reportedly where she worked, right? And like I said, there are pictures of her. If you search up La Planchada, it's going to be the same picture of her in a nurse's outfit, like this old-fashioned one, with the little hat and everything, neatly ironed, just like how they described her in the story. So, more than just, like these La Llorona characters where, in a sense, it's kind of like a boogeyman to, like, scare people. This is a real story. I know, personally, I do believe in La Llorona, and many other people do as well. But, some people might hear that story and think like, oh, that's just a tall tale, something to use to scare kids. But what do you tell to this story? There is actually things to back it up. There's obviously a picture of her. The hospital is real. These reports are real. These people do experience these things. So, I don't know. That's why I left it up to you guys in the end. Let me know what you guys think. Is La Planchada just a spirit that is meant to heal and finish her job that she couldn't fulfill in her lifetime? Or is she some sort of like an angel meant to combat these demonic spirits? Alright, so before we get on to the next story, I do just want to thank my sources. I would like to thank hauntedghoststories.com for the article Who is La Planchada? Meet the Iron Lady, written by an unknown author and updated on March 16th, 2021. I would like to thank seeksghost.blogspot.com for the blog post Mexican Ghost Story, La Planchada, written by Virginia Lampkin on June 15th, 2012. And finally, I would like to thank maskofreason.wordpress.com for their post La Planchada, written by Andrew Black on an unknown date. Alright, so for our next story, I did mention it was going to be our longer one, and this is the case of Waverly Hills Sanatorium. So before we begin, I just want to talk about Waverly Hills for just a little bit. So like I mentioned in the beginning of the episode, the reason why I liked this episode so much, or I was so excited to do it, is because I had never heard of, first of all, La Planchada or Waverly Hills. And let me tell you guys, this story is crazy. So unlike La Planchada, this is not just about one person, but an entire hospital. And this has been reported to be extremely haunted. Like, extremely. If you guys search up Waverly Hills Sanatorium, there's numerous YouTube videos. Ghost Adventures has covered this. Many of these paranormal researchers on YouTube, basically everybody you can think of, they've gone here. And for good reason. So now, let me tell you the story of Waverly Hills Sanatorium. Waverly Hills Sanatorium's history takes place in Louisville, Kentucky, and begins in 1883 when a Major Thomas Hayes purchased land in order to build a school for his daughters to go to. Major Hayes then hired a woman by the name of Lizzie Lee Harris to become a teacher at the school. Lizzie would name the school Waverly School after her love for Sir Walter Scott's Waverly novels. The name would grow on Major Hayes, and he decided to name his property Waverly Hill. Around the end of the 1800s and early 1900s, the US began to experience a tuberculosis, or TB, outbreak, which soon led to the Louisville Board of Tuberculosis Hospital to purchase the land for Major Hayes. And in 1908, construction began on what is now known as the Waverly Hills Sanatorium. The sanatorium officially opened on July 26, 1910, as a two-story building capable of maintaining 40 to 50 TB patients. The growing number of tuberculosis cases in the surrounding area rose alarmingly, and soon, the relatively small Waverly Hills Sanatorium found itself with an excess of 140 patients, well over its intended safe capacity. And now, for those of you that don't know, according to the Center for Disease Control and Prevention, TB is an infectious airborne disease that mainly affects the lungs, causing those affected to feel sick or weak, lose weight, report fevers, cough blood, and feel chest pains, amongst other symptoms. So here's the problem. At the time, it was not known that TB was an airborne disease, so having 140 TB patients in close proximity of each other in a building not equipped to treat even half of that was a recipe for disaster. As a result, in March of 1924, the sanatorium began its expansion until October 20th, 1926, when the sanatorium would eventually reopen for business, capable of holding over 400 patients. Waverly Hills Sanatorium was huge. As stated by the Waverly Hills Sanatorium website, it was a self-contained community, a city in and of itself, complete with its own zip code. Now, if that doesn't give you an idea of just how huge this was, then I don't know. It was basically like a community college, like it had everything. The sanatorium was so big, it even had its own post office, and even sustained itself with its own farm where they grew their own crops and raised their own meat. It was said that once you went to the sanatorium, quote, you became a resident on the hill. Life as a patient at Waverly Hills Sanatorium wasn't the best, as you can probably imagine. The patients were subject to some questionable treatment, ranging from removal of parts of the lung to sometimes the entire lung, as well as the removal of the ribs and even placing balloons within the patient's lungs. As you could probably guess, these methods were not effective, but the staff at the sanatorium were more than prepared for what would come as a result of these experimental procedures, as the newly constructed sanatorium was equipped with a body chute that would be used to move bodies of the deceased patients onto a train for their disposal. All of this would take place at night as to not raise a suspicion of those housed on the hill. The true number of fatalities is unknown, with some reports claiming 1 death per day to others claiming 6,000 to 8,000 in total. The cure to TB would eventually be discovered as the antibiotics showed to be promising, and Waverly Hills Sanatorium would close in 1961. During the time that it remained closed, it was quarantined, revamped, and in 1962, reopened as a nursing home that went by the name of Woodhaven Medical Services, that would be eventually closed by the state in 1981, marking the end of Waverly Hills Sanatorium and its history. Or so they thought. Today, Waverly Hills Sanatorium is ran by the Waverly Hills Historical Society in an effort to preserve the history of Waverly Hills. You can even schedule a tour of the old sanatorium, or if you're considering becoming a ghost hunter, then you're in luck, because you can even schedule your very own ghost hunt. So it seems like they're playing into the haunted history that has made the sanatorium so famous. On that note, let's talk about the different hauntings that are said to take place. One of the most well-known spirits said to haunt Waverly Hills is that of a little boy named Timmy, who was said to have fallen off of the roof of the sanatorium. Many guests will bring toy balls to play with Timmy, and they report the spirit moving the ball back and forth. And so this is something that when I was researching this story, I went ahead and I was searching up these different hauntings, the different ghosts. And if you search up Waverly Hills Sanatorium, there will be many videos of people doing this. They're playing with Timmy, or they'll go in with a ball in an effort to play with him. And I was watching a video by, I believe their names are Sam and Cody, and they were there. They had the ball. Nothing really happened with it, but the person that they were with, I think they had previously done an investigation there, and they mentioned how when they were doing the investigation, they had the ball, and sure enough, the ball was moving. But they also mentioned how like certain people will go in there and they can have the ball, for example, let's just say on the 3rd floor. They'll leave and come back, the ball's no longer there, and when they go up on the 4th floor, the ball is right there. Other people also try to like roll the ball down the hall, and eventually the ball will come back. So if you ever do take a trip to Waverly Hills, chances are you're most likely going to see a bunch of, rubber balls everywhere because of the fact that people want to play with Timmy. And because of the fact that I said that he's one of the most famous ones, I'm pretty sure that if you go, he's sure to play with you. Numerous guests also report seeing shadow people all throughout the building, and this seems to be something that many people report once visiting the sanatorium. Some say it is a sort of hotspot for these entities. One of the scarier spirits is that of an older woman who roams the building crying, bleeding from being chained by the hands and feet. If approached, she is said to run away, screaming in pure horror. Now, look it, I don't know about you guys, but after I heard that, I was like, immediately I was like, you know what? I'm probably never gonna go there just because of this. I could not imagine. For one, I mean, we heard about all those different experimental procedures that they did on these people. Now, chances are this spirit is probably one of those people. I mean, she's an elderly woman, and why would she be chained? I doubt she's an ex-staff member or something. There's a reason for this. This is, there was brutal treatment of these patients, as we see, removal of ribs, pieces of their lung, to the entire lung, to putting a balloon in their lung. Who knows what went unreported there? And the fact that they had a body chute. What would you possibly need a body chute for? Why was that a part of their new construction? Like, all these questions that, we will never know. And so surely this spirit, as scary as it sounds, and I know I would be scared of it, it is probably terrified itself. There you go. Like it said it itself, it runs away if you try to approach it. For all we know, the spirit is thinking that we're, a staff member going to like take her to her next treatment. It's sad that these people had to suffer during their time here. And this woman here is probably suffering even in her afterlife. She's stuck in this place where she most likely passed away. As I mentioned, the reports of the fatalities, they're like unreported. We don't know. I said that somebody had mentioned that it was 1 death per day. Other one said it was 6,000 to 8,000. I saw something as well that said it was something around 24,000. Now, personally, I think that's ridiculous, but we will really never know. Until one day, if somebody were, all we know, they kept some record and one day that we find it, but I highly doubt it. There's so many atrocities that have happened in this country and throughout the world, and sadly they go unnoticed and they go unreported, and this spirit seems to be the victim of one of those. But let's continue. So notice that I said one of the scarier spirits and not the scariest spirit, because that seems to belong to an entity that some know as the Creeper. The Creeper has been known to crawl along the walls and floors of Waverly Hills. Those that have seen the spirit describe it as a dark entity, leading many to believe that the so-called Creeper is demonic. Now, okay, this was, if that old woman wasn't a complete hell no for you, definitely, either you're one of two people. You're just like me, and this literally cemented the fact that you will never go there, or you're part of the other bunch that, hey, to each their own, right? But in my opinion, you guys are crazy. This makes you want to go even more. Now, if I go anywhere and there's somebody crawling on the floor, for one, I'm gonna be a little put off, but especially if it's an abandoned sanatorium, that's gonna scare me even more. Now, the walls, like, what is this? And the fact that they say it's just dark. Like, it doesn't even look like a person. Like, oh my gosh. If you go in that video that I mentioned earlier, Sam and Cody, I think, or Sam and Kobe, just type in Waverly Hills Sanatorium. It should be one of the first videos. They also mention this too. So the person that had previously done their investigation there, they tell them about this creeper, and they kind of show like an illustration of it. I tried searching for like photos of what people say the creeper to be, and I couldn't really find anything. In my opinion, from like the description, the best thing that I could think of is like some sort of like humanoid creature, which is kind of like what they showed. So if you guys haven't heard of it, like the rake, it's kind of like a humanoid person that like walks on all fours, kind of crawls. And they mentioned that it's very dark. The rake is said to be kind of like grayish, but I mean, they say it's like a demonic entity, and I'm with them with that. I mean, this does not sound natural in any sense of the world. Even though, you know, like we're talking about the supernatural, like definitely like no, like this is not a normal spirit. Who knows what happens if this thing gets you or you know what, but I don't want to find out. Tour guides at Waverly Hills claim to see doppelgangers of themselves as well as other people, but with one distinct difference. They don't have eyes. Instead, just empty black holes. Now, again, it seems to get worse and worse. So, not only do they have a woman, you know, the spirit of an old woman bleeding for one, and that's one thing I just thought about right now. This woman is bleeding. Like, I know we hear about, like, you know, the movie The Shining where the blood kind of flushes through and like all this stuff. Like, if these are entities, how are they manifesting blood? But, I mean, I digress. With the doppelgangers now, right? If you guys haven't heard of that phrase, I mean, a doppelganger, I'm pretty sure most people have, but if you haven't, let me explain. So a doppelganger is somebody that is said to look basically like identical to you. Think of it as a twin. And I mean, recently, I had seen that there was a news article, you could probably search this up. Scientists have reportedly said that like everybody most likely has a doppelganger. And that you most likely share some DNA with this person. Which, I mean, that is a topic for, you know, another time, which that is scary. And like, just thinking of it, like, I don't know. I couldn't imagine walking down the street and seeing somebody that looks just like me. And knowing that, hey, we probably share some DNA. But as for this, like, the tour guides have said this themselves. They will either see doppelgangers of themselves or of other people. One thing that they say about doppelgangers is that it's sort of like a bad omen. Whereas if you see them, it's kind of like showing like, hey, something's going to happen to you and this person is most likely going to replace you. We'll have to cover doppelgangers later on this show, but I thought that was really scary. It just seems like whatever happens in Waverly Hills, I was going to say Waverly Place, but Waverly Hills, like, it seems to be never ending. But there is also a ghost of a woman by the name of Mary Lee who lived at the sanatorium. She is so well known due to the fact that she was caught on camera during a 2006 investigation by Tom Helsted, member of Missouri Paranormal Research. Now this photo is very clear, which is why it's so well known. And I personally have never seen the photo of a spirit that looks so clear. It looks almost as if the photo is like of a living person. And what they say is that this woman is like peeking. And again, I will post this photo onto the Instagram, as well as photo of the sanatorium itself and the body chute and all that stuff, so be sure to check it out. But you'll see, if you look at the Instagram post, this photo is so clear. It literally looks like they took a picture of, you know, some woman that's there, like, you know, taking a picture of your friend. But as I mentioned, that she's kind of peeking, right? It looks like she's coming out of the room as if maybe this was her room. One thing that people said is that this Mary Lee was actually, they say that she was either a nurse there, so a member of the staff, or she was like the daughter of a doctor. They also say that she died there too. And one report says that like if she actually is a nurse, there is reportedly a room in Waverly Hills that is one of the most haunted rooms. It is room 502. They say that a nurse committed suicide here, and that she was shortly replaced after that, and that nurse also committed suicide. So some people speculate that Mary Lee, the spirit that is captured in this photograph, is this nurse that took her life. So, I don't know. You guys be the judge of that. Check out the photo. Tell me what you think. It is very, very scary because this is like a very well-cited photo, you know. Many people, if you search a Waverly Hills sanatorium, you look at the images or the articles, many people will show this photo because of the fact that it is so clear. And I've like I said, I've never seen a photo of a spirit or anything look so clear. And it's so eerie to think like, okay, if you're here in this building doing an investigation, and you know, obviously people that, you know, go on to these ghost investigations or these ghost hunts, they want to see something, they want to capture something. But there has to be something eerie about it when you know there's nobody there, you or your crew are the only ones there, you're taking pictures, and then after you look back and you see this entity. See, something like this actually happened to me once. A couple years ago, my family and I went to a mission in Southern California, and when I was there, I was thinking like, oh, what if this place is haunted? So I decided to search up haunted missions in California, and sure enough, the very mission that we were at was said to be like the number 2 most haunted mission in California. Many people said that there were spirits in the church. So once we got in the church, I just started taking pictures like crazy. I was taking pictures of, you know, the altar, of like the seats and everything. I started taking selfies. And then later on that day, we found like a little park nearby, and we were having like a picnic, you know, eating sandwiches and stuff. And I decided, let me look back at my pictures. And that's when I saw it. In the picture that I took, it was a selfie of myself. I took a selfie facing, towards the front. So behind me were all the seats. So where you would sit, you know, during mass or whatever. You could distinctly see these like dots, right? These orbs. Like how we mentioned before, like many people say is that these orbs are spirits themselves. But it's very different from like your typical orbs that you might see like on TV or like the YouTube videos. These are kind of like, they kind of form like a body mass, like a shape of a body, right? And they are perfectly lined up as if they were sitting down in the seats. So like I was looking through, making sure to see if it wasn't like some glare. And no, I mean, like I wear glasses, so like the photo, the sun is shining too. So like in the photo, you would see like the glare on my glasses, as well as like throughout the picture, but you don't really see it. And for some reason, these 4 like apparitions want to like form like a perfect row of people sitting in church. And I'll go ahead and share that photo with you guys on the Instagram as well, just to kind of give you an idea of what I'm talking about. But think of that, like if you're taking these photos and then you review them, like, you know, you're like, yeah, I want to capture something, but when you actually do, it hits you like a bus, like whoa, like how did I not see this? How did I not feel this? And that's definitely the feeling that I got when I captured, I guess, my ghost. So, I mean, let me know what you guys think about the photo at Waverly Hills Sanatorium. And also, let me know what you think of the hospital itself. I know personally, I'm just like appalled at the history behind it. And that's one thing that I wanted to call out on here is that most of this information that I gathered for this story, I got it from the website, therealwaverlyhills.com, which is the website that the Historical Society has set up for it. And I mean, they're buying into like the whole like haunted lore behind it, and they're just going all out with this. So this is something that they clearly like, because I mean, it gets them money. Like I said, you can go on these tours. If you go on the website, they have plenty of other events and stuff too. So this is not something they're shying away from. But what they did shy away from was the fact that they performed all of these like brutal and like disgusting procedures on these people. And like I mentioned, TB was something that just had people like bedridden. You know, you just felt weak. Like it's just terrible. And most likely this was sort of like a death sentence. They even called this like the White Plague. There was no cure. Before the cure for it, you know, these antibiotics, they didn't know what was going on. And like I said, they didn't know that it was airborne. And they had all these people next to each other. The best that they could do were, you know, putting people outside because they thought fresh air could help cure them. But no, I mean, of course you have to have somebody that thinks like, hey, I will find the cure. And they experimented on these people, and these people suffered, and that's why we have this dark history, which is why we have these entities here and why it's so haunted. And I just didn't sit right with me that these people want to play into the whole, oh, haunted hospital type thing, but they don't want to acknowledge the history behind it, the fact that it is haunted, right? So like, what made it haunted? And I don't think you could have this haunted history without addressing why you have this haunted history. So I just wanted to call that out. I mean, I definitely think it's something you guys need to address if you guys are listening by any chance. But yeah, like you just can't go around. Like, I understand you want to preserve the history behind it, but this is the history. And I mean, I don't want to get political, but this is something that we're seeing today in this day and age. Many of these states want to erase the history, and I mean, it's common. It just shows you like this is something that happens every single day. These very minuscule things like Waverly Hill Sanatorium. Like, okay, this is nothing, crazy that everybody needs to learn about, but like these little things that are just getting wiped away, and for good reason. I mean, we need to know about this. So yeah, I mean, I thank you, for listening to my little rant, but that's what I wanted to address. And before we end off the episode, I do just want to thank my sources. Again, I would like to thank therealwaverlyhills.com for all the information about the origins of the sanatorium and its information on how to visit. I would like to thank ihorror.com for the article Haunted History, Waverly Hills Sanatorium, written by Angela Akarana on November 12th, 2020. And finally, I would like to thank ranker.com for the article Scary Tales from the Haunted Waverly Hills Sanatorium, written by Anna Linwauser on December 24th, 2019. Alright, you guys, I just want to thank you all for listening to the episode. And just like we always do, I wanted to close this out with a TikTok, so to give you guys something to talk about. So we all know what mummies are, right? So they're synonymous with ancient Egypt, and many believe that disturbing a mummy's tomb would bring about a curse for whoever should dare to disturb the mummy's rest. Now, what if I told you that there was a mummy of an Egyptian prince buried in Vermont? I know, right? Like, what the hell is an Egyptian mummy doing in the US, let alone buried in a Vermont cemetery? Well, I stumbled upon an article by Diana Logan titled Egyptian Mummy Buried in Graveyard in Vermont, written on August 19th, 2022, and it immediately caught my attention. The article shows a TikTok by the user My Bloody Galentine, which shows the cemetery where 2-year-old Prince Amun Kapesh F is buried. And I apologize if I pronounced that incorrectly. I tried my best. I watched the video and I just tried to imitate what she said, basically. So, in the late 1800s, a collector by the name of Henry Sheldon purchased the mummified prince after grave robbers removed him from his tomb in hopes of displaying him in a museum. And so there we go, typical Americans thinking, hey, this will be great in a museum, or this will be great, centerpiece at my house. Just, yeah, you know what, just stealing things that don't belong to them. And I mean, I know he didn't steal it himself, but the fact that he purchased it in hopes of putting this in a museum, like, come on. He wanted his name on that. And I'm glad that I can inform you guys that he didn't get his wish, because upon receiving the mummy, he was disappointed in the condition, and he decided that it was not worth displaying in the museum. But sadly, he decided to just put the mummy in the attic. And it wouldn't be until 1945 when museum curator George Mead, who thought it would be a good idea to cremate the mummified prince, and he gave him a Christian burial located at the West Cemetery. And if you thought, just like I did, putting this mummy, first of all, taking it away from its resting place, and again, this is a 2-year-old mummy, this is a baby. Although it's been dead for, I think the TikTok mentioned like over 200 years, like this is their culture, they did this as their cultural practice, and disturbing its rest to bring it to America to put it on display in a museum, disrespectful already. But this museum curator decided like, oh, Now after he found it after all these years, like, I'm going to cremate it and give it a Christian burial ground. Like, how disrespectful could that be? Like, why? What made him think that this was a good idea? Just think of that. I mean, if you think that I'm overreacting, okay, fine, right? Let me give you an example. Let's just say you're Catholic or Christian, right? From my understanding, you want to be buried, right? Just normal, have a head tomb and everything has stone. Now, what if we told you that we did a practice that was common in Asia or another country? You wouldn't like that. You would get mad because you want to honor your values and your beliefs. So why did he think this was a good idea? And if you look at the TikTok, the one thing that just kind of like made me so angry was the fact that like they write, his name, that he died when he was 2 years old, that he was a prince, and that he came from Egypt. But then at the very top of the tombstone, they put a little cross on it. Like, come on. Clearly, these people weren't Christian. They had their own religion. They had their own beliefs. They had their own customs, and just completely disrespected it. Just threw it in the trash, basically, like it didn't matter. So, I mean, check out the TikTok. Let me know what you guys think. Personally, like I just said, I just think this is disrespectful and it's sad. But I mean, hey, we're keeping the story alive by sharing this with everybody. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed the episode. Thank you all again for listening. And if you have a story to tell, please send it into our email at calaveriapod@gmail.com. And again, if you think that it might not be a scary story, if it's nothing as scary as Waverly Hills Sanatorium, don't worry, you guys. I have plenty of scary stories that, horror stories, ghost stories that most people might not even think they're scary, but they're scary to me, and that's all that matters. So feel free to send it in. Also, feel free to follow us on TikTok, Instagram, and Twitter at calaveriapod. And I don't want to brag, but I posted a TikTok recently about Leto the doll, and it kind of blew up. Not really. I mean, I gained a couple followers, but it was cool. So, I mean, yeah, check us out. And also, if you guys want to support the show, feel free to leave a rating and review wherever you guys listen. If you guys are listening on Spotify, we know that you can't leave a review, so feel free to leave a 5-star rating or whatever you think we deserve. And I think that's all that we have for you guys. So thank you all for listening. Peace.